So recently, I've been writing a novel that I've uploaded to the Kindle store. I'm very proud of it. I'm releasing it in small episodes. So the first episode contains the first 5 chapters. It's a bit small, as I've said. It's only 47 pages. I've just finished writing episode 2, and that should be about 60 or 70 pages. The idea is that I release the novel in bite-sized chunks so that it's easy for me to manage writing it on the go. It gives me something to do while I don't have a job, and when I get a job, it'll give me something to do in my free time, and I can gradually release the novel, which I'm really happy about. Okay, so this is a novel which is called Apocalyptic Renaissance Calypso, Green Tea for Beginners, and I'm gonna just have a sip of water. I've got my buddy here, my little buddy Desmond that I got at the MCM Expo. He's gonna perch on my shoulder here. I'm having trouble balancing that, so he's not. I'm just gonna hold him. Okay, so let's go. Brett Wells drank between 7 and 14 cups of green tea every day. He would regularly bore his students with this fact. He also knew the precise number of bananas he had ever eaten in his life. Life in Tokyo was harder than Brett had imagined. Unlike in England, nobody here cared how many bananas he had, or how many pages he had turned. Nobody cared how many bananas he had eaten, or how many cups of tea he drank. Where the heck are you going? You have a lesson in 40 minutes, the surgical mask-clad air hostess-like receptionist shrieked. Oh, sorry, Murasaki, Brett stumbled. I kind of wanted to get some tea, if that's okay with you. Whatever, man. Just don't waste my time. I know you'd hate to lose 20,000 yen for being late to your next lesson, wouldn't you? Breaking eye contact to avoid Murasaki's venomous gaze, Brett dashed out of the door. He barely had time to tie his shoelaces. Hosogawa, Brett's least favorite student, stood in the middle of the derelict stairwell, glued to his tacky flip phone. Heading to lunch, sensei, he purred, adjusting his pristine gold-rimmed, wire-framed glasses. Remember, Mr. Bretto, we have a lesson in precisely 37 minutes and 30 seconds. And I can assure you, Mr. Hosogawa, it's going to blow your mind. Brett lied. He had no idea what the lesson would be about. He hadn't picked it yet. Actually, I was hoping to learn about superlatives and the present progressive form today. It will be the greatest lesson ever, Mr. H. Be right back. Ducking into the garish orange elevator, Brett breathed a sigh of relief. The dehumidifier filled the elevator with rainbow-colored, lavender-scented clouds of calm. Zigzagging past the furious bicycle owners and virtual Pokemon masters, Brett stumbled through the narrow, one-way street. Although it was a Saturday, rambunctious, uniformed high school students yelled at each other as they played rock, paper, scissors at the train crossing. Hypnotized by the klaxon tone of the pedestrian crossing, Brett stared blankly as a train accelerated past, traversing the high street like a fever dream. Brett sleepwalked towards a tea shop. The Showa-era automatic doors refused to cooperate with his will to enter the shop. Eventually, the doors screeched open, releasing clouds of dust upon the streets of Hibarigaoka. A tiny old lady looked up and yelled a half-hearted "Irashaimase!" greeting. What do you want? She added abruptly. Bowing obsequiously, Brett fumbled for the correct words. I want to buy some tea, please, if that's all right. You're hardly looking for coffee now, are you? She slammed the palms of her wrinkled hands onto the counter. Bloody coffee. It's all you young people want to drink these days. They don't even sell sencha in chain cafes. Brett nodded. He was sick of ordering hojicha. Okay, boy, the lady continued. How much are you willing to spend? I want the tastiest tea you have. Brett took a deep breath. I'm willing to pay 2,000 or 3,000 yen, if necessary. Big man, the cantankerous owner scowled. Look, son, can I give you some advice? Brett, suspecting a bollocking, said nothing. Listen, it doesn't matter if your tea costs 50 yen or 1 million yen. If you don't brew it properly, it's going to taste like utter shite. Sorry, ma'am. How do I brew tea that doesn't taste like shite? Brett wanted to ask how she knew what shite tasted like, but thought better of it. The stubborn crone sighed disdainfully. I suppose it can't be helped now, can it? You might as well take a seat. She gestured towards a tiny wooden stool, the kind you would find in a poorly funded secondary school science lab. Brett hesitated for a moment. Don't worry, the lady cackled. I don't bite. Teeth ain't as good as they used to be. The bizarre lady dug her talons into an ornate tin of tea leaves and threw a green clump into a nearby teapot. Most young folk only put a teaspoon or two into a pot. So frugal, kids these days, afraid to truly experience anything. Fill the whole pot, I say. We ain't getting any younger, she said, placing the pot over an ancient stove in the middle of the counter. They waited in silence for the kettle to boil. A minuscule bead of sweat dripped from Brett's forehead. Unable to check his watch out of fear of offending the owner, he was paralyzed by anxiety. Brett would often cry out into the night, haunted by nightmares of being late for lessons and losing a whole day's pay. Let me tell you about tea. Most young people only ever make tea for themselves and drink it like it's going out of fashion. The owner picked up the teapot with care, slowly spinning it a few revolutions. Like this. What's the rush? Brett smiled. It's only 20,000 yen. I've lived on omelettes before. At least now I'll have tea to go with them. Delicately, the owner poured an emerald stream of sencha into a tiny ceramic cup. Listen, boy. What's your name? Brett. Listen, Bretto. She readied his cup. You need to be considerate when it comes to tea. If you boil the water too hot, you will hurt the leaves. They'll cry out in pain if you hurt them, and they'll taste like death. Treat the leaves like living things. Treat them with care and consideration. Brett nodded. Enjoy your tea, Brett. Remember, it's more than a drink. It's a way of connecting with people. Tea exists for other people. When you do something for someone, you gotta give it your all. You understand? Brett sipped from his miniature cup. The tea was as delicate as it was stringent. The tea moved like velvet as it soothed the young man. Stern, yet fair, the bitterness receded into a sweetness. How is it? The owner asked. It's as if I've been sleepwalking through the day, Brett said. I feel like I've finally woken up. At 4:30 in the afternoon, I should hope so. The owner cackled. Stay for another cup. She readied a tin of powdered tea. Screw Hosogawa, Brett thought. Screw superlatives and the present progressive form. I'm going to have a tea, damn it. He nodded enthusiastically. Time drank itself almost as quickly as the matcha did. Have a cup of this stuff every morning and you'll sure as heck be regular. The old lady winked. Another cup? Sorry, ma'am, I'd really love to, but I've got to get back to work soon. I'll buy some of that sencha, though. It's 3,000 yen, but it's top-notch. She pounded the counter with a tiny, wrinkled fist. 3,000 yen? And that's practically free. Bowing, Brett dunked 3 crisp 1,000-yen notes onto the counter. Thanking the lady profusely, he scrambled out of the door, prize in hand. He skipped gleefully back to class. Wide-eyed and astonished, Murasaki pointed invisible daggers of hatred at Brett as he strolled into the building. Where in the name of Doraemon have you been? You're late. Late? Are you high? The lesson doesn't even begin for 5 minutes. If anything, I'm early. Brett said. Murasaki muttered under her breath. Her voice was silenced by the pink surgical mask. I've given your lesson to Jace. You're teaching Akemi instead. Be grateful that I'm not docking your pay. Thank you, your benevolent excellency, Brett said sarcastically. Not wanting to push his luck any further, he made his way towards the tiny, cluttered staff room. Hosogawa coughed aggressively from the safety of his lesson cubicle at the back of the room. Superlatives again? Jace moaned. Fucking A. Enjoy your lesson, bro, Brett said. He gingerly leafed his way through a textbook, selecting a lesson at random. Yeah, Jace said. Get out of here. Brett exited the staff room and journeyed 0.8 of a meter across the hall to the unnecessarily air-conditioned teaching room. He wrapped the fluffy sleeve of his cardigan around his hand. Cautious of static electricity, he manipulated the metal door handle with his woolly navy blue gauntlet. He made no allowance for collateral damage and allowed the door to slam into the wall, adding to a well-defined indent. Akemi, who had been sleeping face down on the desk, shot up. 1789, she yelped. France Kakume. Yes, 1789 was the year of the French Revolution, Brett said, allowing a thumbs up to seep through his cardigan. Don't worry, Akemi, you aren't in school anymore. Well, technically you are, but you're an adult now, and it's voluntary. Akemi smiled warmly, her plump cheeks reddened. It felt like the high school for a moment. Sorry, Bretto, what is voluntary? Voluntary. He made an abstract gesture with two vague, outstretched hands. Means I want to do it because it is my choice. I volunteered to work for charity when I left high school. Ah, volunteer katsudo wa voluntary kana? Correct. Brett clicked his index finger into a finger pistol. Good job, Akemi. Sorry, Bretto. Today I am too tired, Akemi said, stifling a yawn. I'm wearing my jersey because I went to the gym after work. Jersey? Judge? Brett said, bemused. Judge? No, jersey. She laughed and pointed at her light blue tracksuit top. Oh, Brett said. Not judge, jersey. I've been learning Japanese for 10 years and only now does it click. Diligently, Akemi scribbled the words volunteer, voluntary, and jersey into her notebook. Brett appreciated being listened to and taken seriously. This didn't tend to happen too often in the UK school system. Well, enough for today. Let's turn to page 84. Akemi reached across the oval-shaped table and tapped Brett on the shoulder. No textbook today. Can we just have a conversation? She asked nervously before returning to her seat. That's the best thing a student can ask for in the afternoon, Brett said, flinging the textbook to the floor. They both laughed. Okay, what do you want to talk about? I wanted to ask you, do you like living in Japan? Brett remembered something he had repressed earlier in the day, a thought that came to him as he waited at the train crossing for what felt like an eternity. He was thinking about how easy it would be to walk in front of the speeding train, to kill himself. He was tempted until images of his friends and family flashed past. These thoughts came to him as naturally as breathing these days. Japan's an interesting place to live, Brett said, his smile fading. I'll be honest though, it can get a little lonely sometimes. It's the quiet I can't stand. It makes me think that I'm too loud and that being loud is a bad thing, and that makes me a bad person. Brett was trained for only 3 days before teaching his first lesson. The training was farcical and deducted from his pay. During the training, Brett and his colleagues were told that students would laugh when they were nervous or scared, as if this was a trait unique to Japanese people. It wasn't. Brett let out a nervous laugh. I'm sorry if I upset you, Bretto, Akemi said. She closed her eyes and bit down on her bottom lip. I didn't have that tsumori. Oh no, Brett said. I'm just a bit tired is all. Tsumori is intention in English, Akemi. It would be better to say, I didn't intend to upset you. Sometimes Tokyo is too quiet, Akemi continued. It is difficult to make a friend here. That's true, Brett said, but once you make a friend here, you make a friend for life. Akemi nodded fiercely, making affirmative humming noises. I think that any friend you make in Tokyo will stay friends with you, even if you decide to go back to England. You are bright and Genki. I think it's okay to be loud if you are bright and Genki. Thanks, he chuckled. That's a very sweet thing to say. Akemi folded her arms and began to shiver. Are you cold, Akemi? I can turn off the air conditioning if you like. I'm freezing. Please, Akemi said earnestly. But will that be okay? It will probably annoy Murasaki-san, Brett said. But everything I do annoys her, so why the heck not? Brett walked to the air conditioning panel and deactivated it, trying not to think of the repercussions. Murasaki had complete control over Brett and Jace's schedules as well as their customer feedback. The resentment that her bosses had cultivated through back-breaking hours of overtime and a meager payslip had left Murasaki with a bitter edge alongside considerable power and control over others. Thank you, Akemi said. It is too cold for autumn. She closed her notebook and rested her gel pen on top of it. Mr. Bretto, I have an important question. Is it okay for me to ask? Sure, Brett said, forgetting to return to his seat. How do you cope with living in another country, if you are lonely? Brett paused for a moment. He rested a contemplative palm on his chin and stared at the unguarded fluorescent bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. Jace often complained about how the unnatural... Oh, pardon me. That is a grammar mistake there. Not too many of them here, but I'm going to have to be careful about that. Jace often complained about how unnatural the lighting was in Tokyo. Brett always egged him on by describing the light as hyper-real. It isn't easy, Brett sighed. I talk to my parents and friends online when I can. It stops me from getting too homesick. Akemi continued to nod and to affirm, sensing that Brett had more to say. He talked a lot, but he never spoke down to her. Akemi was someone that Brett could be honest with. She was so sincere and trustworthy that he wasn't afraid to open up and show vulnerability on occasion. Honesty, as well as acknowledging the other person as a human being, were frowned upon by Brett's instructors in his training sessions. At the end of the day, Japan's just a place. It gets sad and lonely in Japan sometimes, but I got sad and lonely in England sometimes too. Brett sat down and rested his cardigan on the back of his chair. The key is to find new experiences and to go outside of your comfort zone. Do new and exciting things. Keep busy, and you'll keep the bad feelings at bay. Sorry, Bretto. Those were wonderful words, but what does keep at bay? Akemi asked. She blushed slightly. It means to stop them from spreading. He gestured, leaving an object marked bad feelings on the other side of an imaginary dam. Solemnly, Akemi bowed. Thank you, Bretto. I want to homestay in the US soon, but I'm very scared. I'm not brave like you are. You're braver than you think you are, Akemi. Your English is improving more and more each lesson, too. I think you have a great time in America. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you very much, Akemi said. I feel very anshin? At ease, Brett said with a warm smile. Channeling his inner Orson Welles, Brett orated his story of the tea shop and spoke about the things that confused him in Japan. Akemi amazed Brett with her superhuman schedule and explained how a lot of Japanese words that sounded English had completely different meanings to what you would think. 40 minutes passed and the lesson ended. Well, Akemi, Brett bowed, I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson as much as I've enjoyed teaching it. He meant it. Before I go, do you have any advice for me, a foreigner in Tokyo? Just one advice, Akemi whispered. Tokyo people can be very reckless with people's feelings. Don't fall in love with anyone who doesn't love you first. Well, that's very serious advice, Brett said with a wry smile. He looked Akemi in the eye. She was no older than him. As cute as he found her, he tried his best to suppress his feelings during lessons. It's something I read in a book, she said. You had me for a second there, Brett said. They both chuckled before being swallowed up by their busy schedules. So a lot of people would go into that chapter reading it and thinking that Brett is the main character, and there are actually 6 or 7 main characters in this novel, and the idea is that they all have different stories which will eventually interlock with each other in various parts. I really love that style of story, and I've enjoyed so many books where that kind of thing has happened. Just gonna have a quick sip of tea. Today's stream is sponsored by my little buddy Desmond, who is a slime from Dragon Quest, which is an excellent game. Oh, he's not facing the camera. Yeah, anyway. Yes, it landed on the bed. Perfect. Okay, let's go to the next chapter. Chapter 2, October 2018, New York. Edith Oldswan loved to observe. It was through observation that she learned 2 valuable skills: how to roll up and smoke a joint, or dubois, for the first time. Don't crush the dubois. Handle it with care. Don't wet the end or hold on to the cherished ephemeral object for more than 2 puffs. This is basic smoking etiquette. You know, Darrow said. His hands did as much of the talking as his words did. TV critics would often proclaim that Darrow Skylark's hands were the secret behind his vast riches. I never heard the word dubois used in conversation until I met you, Oldswan. Is it a British thing or something? Edith knew the secret to Darrow's success wasn't his hands or his words. It was the hypnotic way in which he spoke. His voice, the rise and fall of his inflections and intonations, was so darn iconic. It reshaped the way comedy was performed on American television. Nope, Edith said. She took a long drag of her dubois. She wasn't as thrilled by the drug use now that she was a participant. She inhaled the smoke greedily, inhaled once more, and exhaled after a time. She thought it tasted like burnt chorizo. I got it from a book about tennis and drug addicts, she grinned, like a skinny Buddha, for the first time in months. Get out of town, Skylark protested. Edith took another carefully timed drag, diving into the emerald sea of casual drug usage. The one by that new sincerity guy? I can't stand that new sincerity crap. Way too preachy. Edith's eyes were heavy. Her chest felt as tight as it did during the opera scene of Final Fantasy VI. Remembering stoner etiquette, she handed a handsome portion of the dubois to her patron. That's because you're not a very sincere person, Darrow, Edith smirked. Plus, the whole thing was very anti-weed. All I'm saying is that if I needed a pompous rich guy to tell me how to think, Skylark said, well, I wouldn't be much of a pompous rich guy myself now, would I? Skylark leaned back on his half of the L-shaped sofa, sitting as he had done whenever his therapist came to visit. He had convinced himself that he didn't really need a therapist, but he could afford one, so why not? He exhaled a ring of smoke, which dissipated as it collided with the ceiling. Wow, Darrow. You look at that. You're Gandalf the Green. They both found this inexplicably funny, crying with laughter and interspersed bouts of coughing. Promptly, Edith snatched the dubois from Darrow. She sat up with her legs crossed on her side of the L shape. I'm plenty sincere, he said. I just use sarcasm as a defense mechanism. At least that's what my therapist tells me. It's like toast. I just can't for the life of me enjoy toast without peanut butter. Edith took another drag. The fluorescent light seemed far brighter than before, almost holographic. Darrow's New York penthouse sparkled and glistened like a jewel-encrusted strip of tinfoil. Yeah, she said. Tell me something sincere, then. Something from the heart. Oh, I'll tell you something sincere, all right? I'll tell you something so damn sincere that you think it was written by goddamn Mr. Rogers or Gandhi. Darrow knew which words to emphasize and how to radiate passion and enthusiasm, even if he didn't care for what he was saying. Go on, then, Edith goaded. So sincere that you may even betray me at the Last Supper if I tell you. Spare me the Messiah complex, Edith said, yawning. All right, sheesh. Give a guy a minute, will you? Darrow said, sinking down into the L-shaped sofa. You know Samantha, the lady who plays Eloise on my show? Of course I know. I'm writing your biography, man. She exhaled once more. Her mouth was dry. She was starting to feel a little light-headed. She passed the joint back to Darrow. Ashes spilled from the Dubois onto Darrow's sweater. It was the sweater he wore on the Mothball episode of Skylark, charcoal grey with a horizontal black stripe flanked by two smaller yellow stripes. I always wondered why they called it a sweater, he said, batting the ashes to the floor. Makes it sound like the sole purpose of the garment is to make people sweat. Who wants to sweat? We call them jumpers in the UK, Edith said. She wore a minimalist black jumper of Japanese design. You wouldn't know by looking at it, since the human eye can't properly process it, but the material was a scientifically perfect shade of black. She didn't dare to look too deeply into it, or check out how much it cost. Why not just get to the point and call it a slobber? Darrow complained. It's just going to get covered in pizza and beer stains anyway. He exhaled and inhaled the THC at a leisurely pace. You're avoiding the subject, Edith scoffed. Classic Skylark. I guess your show was all one big tangent when you think about it. You were saying about Samantha? Hey, Edith, want to order a pizza? Darrow asked. Edith frowned, rolling her eyes at the comedian. Oh, all right. Look, this is off the record, right? Edith nodded. Darrow handed Edith the charred remains of the Dubois. Well, I think I love her. You love her? Edith said disdainfully. That sort of contradicts your rant from chapter 7 about how you don't believe in romantic love. Well, you know me, Darrow grinned. I hardly ever say anything sincere. Wow. Edith made quick work of the faded remains of the Dubois. You're a piece of work, Darrow. What makes you think you're in love with Samantha Barnes all of a sudden? I don't know, Darrow said, but you know, we never had sex, despite all those years of working together. I mean, I'd like to, but I want it to be perfect, special even. I don't get why a guy can't just love a girl as a friend. It always has to be more, Edith complained. She's engaged, remember? Darrow stood up decisively in the heat of the moment. Due to the lack of friction influenced by his cotton socks, he slipped back down onto the sofa. Get out of town, he groaned. If I went out of town, Edith said, you'd have to finish your book on your own. At this, they downward spiraled into a fit of laughter. Time ate itself. The pizzas arrived. The pizzas practically ate themselves. Is she really getting engaged? Darrow mumbled. She told you last week, Edith said. At the restaurant, the one with the oysters? You told her you were overjoyed. I was obviously being insincere. Darrow groaned. He held his hands out, pleading to the ceiling. You might not know this, but that's sort of my thing. Edith sighed. If you really loved her, you'd be happy for her. She's engaged to a Hollywood producer. She's going to write screenplays for him. She may even get to star in some of them. I'm happy for her, Darrow said, but what about me? Am I just going to float through life without ever finding anyone to love? Edith stood up and dumped the empty pizza boxes onto Darrow. You like pizza, right? I don't just like it. Darrow flattened the boxes and dumped them underneath the table. I love it. Pizza is something you can enjoy from time to time. It makes you really happy. But you can't truly own it. Edith thought about Makoto. Makoto was married now. It's ephemeral, something you can only enjoy in the moment. You can't own it, but that's okay. What was Makoto's husband's name again? Edith thought. No one appreciates what they've got till it's gone, Darrow said. Gingerly, he hit a fresh cube of hash and broke it down, stuffing its granules into a joint. He promptly lit the joint. We going to Coventry again? Edith asked. That's what we call it in England. After his third or fourth puff, stone etiquette be damned, he handed Edith the key to the city. Coventry someplace in Britain, he said. Yeah, Coventry got blazed pretty badly in the war, she said. They convulsed with laughter once more. You love anyone, Edith? Darrow asked. She shrugged. You're always so secretive. Come on, you must be in love with someone. You ever watch anime? Edith asked, dodging the question. She was struggling to keep her thoughts together in the presence of the colourful furniture of the late 90s, the innumerable alphabetized VHS tapes, and the decaying remains of pizza boxes stuffed under the table. The light was especially vivid, with vapour trails and visible humidity. Darrow and Edith were sat cross-legged on the floor at this point in the evening. It reminded Edith of primary school. Anime? Darrow said dismissively. I watched Makira sometimes when I'm stoned. What's the deal with that? movie. The main guy isn't even in the movie. You ever heard of one called Apocalyptic Renaissance Calypso before? Edith said, ignoring Daryl's quips. Daryl said nothing. He stared into the perfect void of Edith's sweater and nodded. He had no idea what she was talking about. I've never seen the last episode, Edith continued. It's my favourite anime ever. But I've never seen the last episode. I've seen all the other ones about 15 times, but I just can't bring myself to finish it. Coughing severely, she gulped down a glass of water. I can't do it. I don't think I'll ever get to watch the last episode. Daryl was hypnotized by the subtlety of Edith's vocal inflections. If only she did more of her hands when she talked, he thought. The network execs would love that. He sauntered to the refrigerator. Oops, there is a mistake there. Don't worry about that. I'll fix it in the final version. And opened a can of cola with a decisive click. If you love the show so much, why don't you marry it? Daryl said, instantly lamenting his immaturity. You want to talk, Edith scowled. Just don't get all upset if I do decide to marry it. Okay, Daryl smiled wryly. I'm a jerk. Please continue your love story. I can't watch the last episode because I don't want to take ownership of the experience. I feel like I'd become entitled and... Oh, my accidentally unplugged something there. I feel like I'd become entitled and... Sorry. This thing sure is annoying. Let's see if I unplug it. Can you still hear me? Yes. Okay. I can't watch the last episode because I don't want to take ownership of the experience. I feel like I'd become entitled and maybe even start to hate the series if I finally did watch the last episode. Maybe I'm just afraid that it would all be over and that my love would be wasted. My love would be as meaningless as my show? Daryl grinned. Nah, Daryl, Skylark made you rich and it's going to pay my rent for a few months. I'm content. You might be content, Daryl said, but I'm not. I'm not going to be afraid anymore. I'm going to do something with these feelings. So I like the repeating motif of a can opening, things clicking. So far I've got the pattern of green tea, weed, green stuff, I guess. So let's carry on with the next chapter. I don't know how many viewers I've got, but I'm not too bothered. I'm having a real good time with it. And it's going to go up on YouTube anyway, so who cares? Okay. Chapter 3, October 1999, Tokyo. So the last two chapters took place in 2018. This one takes place in 1999, 19 years before that. Would Miss Hirakawa like a cup of coffee? Ko Yamato asked. Yamato wasn't your typical salaryman. You could tell from the ironic Doors 95 t-shirt and the minimalist blazer and jeans that he was on another level. It seems like the least I could do on the day of your father's funeral. There we go, it's opening something. On the day of your father's funeral, his words were as slick as his trendy 20,000 yen haircut. I'm not much of a coffee drinker, Nagisa Hirakawa said in a hushed tone. I prefer green tea. Sorry. Nagisa didn't want to be at the Time Box coffee shop in Shakuji Koen on the day of her father's funeral. She wished dearly to be at home playing Dragon Quest V at a calm, relaxed pace. She hated this particular coffee shop. It was plagued with noise and it reeked of cigarette smoke. The local crones would camp at their tables, refuse to order anything, and relentlessly shit-talk whoever walked past. This is a simple request, Yamato said, mimicking the booming voice of a certain wish-granting dragon. He clicked his fingers, summoning an intern. He handed the college boy a scrunched-up 10,000 yen note. Hey, Joe College, get her green tea. Not the drink-your-own-piss for health kind that your granddaddy hooks up to his IV, though. Not the Jidaigeki and chill kind. And for Christ's sake, don't get her an oolong tea. Yamato took a deeply exaggerated breath. Make sure if it has a haiku on the side, it's the inspirational kind and not the ritual group shitting on Basho's grave kind. An honest to God tea, you got that? The intern lied in the affirmative and rushed out of the cafe, severely questioning his life choices. This guy is a walking public service announcement for the evils of cocaine, Nagisa thought. She instantly regretted this thought. It made her feel judgmental and vindictive. This kind of cyclical regression from observation to self-criticism was slowly destroying her self-confidence. Yamato ordered a coffee and ushered Nagisa to the table where Manami Janochi sat. Deflated, Janochi sluggishly stirred her latte concoction. She yawned as the sleazy executive producer and the androgynous wunderkind came to sit with her. So, can you write? Janochi asked abruptly. A lot of people in this industry suck at writing. Anime writers these days just like to slap a bunch of popular buzzwords together to cater towards the popular adolescent power fantasy of the times. Well, Manami-chan, Yamato cut in. We are writing a giant robot show. Nagisa took a giant breath and summoned up the courage to speak out. I've been shortlisted a few times for writing competitions. I can't write, she thought, and you shouldn't even bother considering me. Shortlisted for what? Manami asked. Green tea haiku? She laughed. Her laugh was as bitter as the crap she was drinking. Don't mind Miss Janochi here, Yamato said. No one admires your father's work as much as she does. Micros changed her life. It made her cry. He didn't even direct that one, Janochi scowled. You're such a poser, Carl. Whatever, Yamato hissed. How can you drink that corpse in a can crap, Janochi? It's making you into a real meanie. He turned his Sly Fox smile to Nagisa. Miss Hirakawa, I can only assume that you dislike coffee because you've only ever experienced the shit-stained dregs of the latte trend. Janochi retorted with an enthusiastic smile as she offered her boss the middle finger treatment. Nagisa pretended to laugh. She went to her happy place. Her character in Dragon Quest V married Bianca. Only a soulless monster, she thought, would abandon their precious childhood friend to marry some rich girl, especially after adventuring with Bianca. Nagisa didn't have a childhood friend. She barely had anyone to talk to. She suspected that Yamato and Janochi would never be her friends. She knew that they would drain her of her talent and optimism, discarding her empty husk like yesterday's rice. She just wanted to go home and embark on a dragon quest. Was that really too much to ask? No, Yamato continued. He clicked his fingers and pointed a finger pistol at Nagisa. You, my Kodansha nominee, my protégée, the daughter and little sister I never had. You want to drink quality beans brewed in a simple, loving fashion. Magic box here. It's okay if you're already initiated, but you're missing out on an entire world here. He sniffed a few times and then sipped his coffee, basking in its radiance. Kodansha nominee? Janochi said. An almost half smile emerged. A career writer at your age? What genre did you write? I'm just going to close the door over a bit. I'm worried. Noise might be seeping through. I wouldn't call myself a writer, Nagisa said, bowing her head. This was the first time telling anyone about the Kodansha Prize. Besides, my stories don't really have genres. Everyone's got a genre, Yamato said. Even your father, as eclectic as his work was, worked with a genre. I don't subscribe to the idea of genre fiction, Nagisa muttered. Why limit yourself? Here's your tea, the intern interrupted. Bowing deeply, he presented the can of Ippuku Ocha on an ornate wooden tray. Snatching the can, Yamato shooed away the intern, allowing him to keep the masses of change at the price of his dignity. I understand that you're still in high school, Miss Hirakawa, Janochi said. I was all about romanticism and idealism when I was a kid too. You can be as romantic and idealistic as you like, but you'll struggle in the real world, writing without a genre. I get it. You don't want to pander to a specific audience, but you're writing for an audience. You need to be considerate to your viewers. Chill out, Manami-chan, Yamato interrupted. We need that youthful energy. We need to harness her angst and tragedy. We need Miss Hirakawa to construct a piece of art that transcends the limitations of the medium, something that will make men and women the world alike weep tears of passion. Carl Yamato wiped actual tears from his eyes. He clapped his hands twice, summoning an intern. Producing a pink handkerchief, the intern wiped the executive producer's moist cheeks. Yamato held out a stern hand, banishing the poor intern to obscurity once more. Your father was a great man, Yamato continued. If you excuse me, ladies, I must take a brief rest in the smoking room. Nothing beats a cool Jupiter after a cry. I'll leave you two genii to bask in each other's greatness. Maybe you need to go to the powder room again, Junichi asked coolly. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Carl winked before skipping like a schoolboy into the glass hellscape of the smoking room. I'll be frank with you, Hirakawa-san, Junichi said. I don't like the idea of a high schooler writing the finale of the biggest anime since Damgun. She took a sip of her vile latte without flinching. Lofty ideas about literature are all well and good, but even a genius like your father... My father wasn't a genius, Nagisa whispered. Junichi scowled. If she was an anime character, a bulging vein would be visible on her forehead. What? She said. Speak up. My time is valuable, and I don't want to waste it playing speech therapist. I said my father wasn't a genius. He was sick, Nagisa said quietly, but with conviction. Every syllable stung. She gripped her can of ippuku tightly. He was eccentric, sure, Junichi said, but he was the best writer I've ever worked with. He wasn't well. Do you know why he ended his life? Nagisa said. Junichi shook her head. He killed himself because he couldn't find the right shade of white. The right shade of... What are you talking about? My father was a very secretive man. He never submitted his work in person and only ever corresponded with people over the phone. Did you ever wonder why that was? Nagisa pulled the ring of her can of tea. Click. It's because Calypso was just a side project to distract him from his true calling. His true calling? Junichi said. Her right eye twitched. She was painfully aware of this twitching, a subconscious tic that she had no control over. She hated it. Are you telling me that Calypso... Oh, text tone. It's very loud. I'm gonna turn off my phone for a moment. Are you telling me that Calypso, the most critically acclaimed anime of all time, was just a distraction? Are you telling me that Masato Hirakawa didn't care about his work? It was nothing but graffiti on a napkin. Nagisa rummaged through her school bag and produced a heavy, leather-bound book. She dropped it down on the wooden table with a thud. This was Masato Hirakawa's life's work. Junichi grabbed hold of the book and opened it. Her hands began to tremble at the sight of nothing, she said. It's empty. It's an anti-novel, Nagisa said. Look very carefully at the pages. Notice anything? There's nothing here, Junichi said. Nothing but a blank canvas, to you and me. But my father was striving towards something. I went to his study before the funeral. He had hundreds of similar books stacked all over the floor. Nagisa took a long sip of her green tea. He wrote, in his suicide note, that he had failed. He wanted to find the perfect shade of white, the blankest possible page. He tried desperately to find it, and when he couldn't, he lost hope. She bowed her head down, examining the scratches and dents of the wooden table. So, what's an anti-novel? Junichi asked hesitantly. According to my father's notes, it's a serene emptiness that will inspire anyone to write the perfect novel. The novel of the soul, Nagisa said solemnly. The truth is that my father wasn't very well. He was too scared to ask for help. He couldn't accept that he was ill. His final months were very difficult for everyone involved. Junichi closed the book and pushed it away. I didn't want to finish the script, Nagisa said. She downed the remaining tea from the can before crushing it. Dad made something that moved so many people, resonated with them, changed their lives, in fact. But he didn't care about that. He was empty, struggling to cope and to stay alive. I didn't want to finish the script. I didn't. Tears drenched her cheeks. But it meant something to me. You know? I had to save it. I had to give Calypso a meaning. Nagisa pulled a thick pile of manuscript paper from her school bag and gently lowered it onto the table. I didn't want to write it, but in the end, I wrote it. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her cardigan. She edged away from the table. Wait, she exclaimed. She walked up to Nagisa. With a maternal instinct that was alien to her, she embraced the crying girl. She hugged Nagisa tightly. I'm a jerk. I'm a bitter adult. I'm sorry about what I said. You need to be guarded in this business. I'm going to help you. Together, we're going to make the greatest anime episode since the last episode of Gunbluster. Thank you, Nagisa said. The tears wouldn't stop. It's not going to be much fun, Junichi continued, and you're going to be sick of me when you're finished, but you aren't going to regret it. Peering behind the glass of the wretched smoking room, Junichi caught a glimpse of Carl Yamato's smug grin. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Carl Yamato extinguished his cigarette and unflipped his tacky, indestructible Docomo flip phone. Kimiko-chan, baby, it's Carl. Did you miss me? Yes, of course I remember. You remember my size, right? He looked at the table and grinned. Junichi and Nagisa were going through the manuscript together. Yeah, that's the one. He's our sponsor. No, none of that. Save it just for me. Just take him out for yakiniku. Wear something slutty. Tell him about how much you love the show. Yeah, we want to triple the budget for the last episode. No, it's going to fail spectacularly. He chuckled as he lit a final Jupiter, tucking the phone between his shoulder and ear to do so. You try being rich as I am, and I guarantee you won't give a fuck about how much money you lose. I'm not a businessman, baby. I'm a performer. He laughed once more before hanging up. Carl returned to Junichi and Nagisa. The manuscript was covered from top to bottom with post-it notes of various colours. It can't be so abstract here, Junichi said. The audience needs to know about 8's intent. Make it a little clearer. Hi, Nagisa said, scribbling onto a post-it note. Looks like it's all going to plan, Carl said. I need to return to the office. I'll leave you ladies to finish up here. Drinks? I'll get another green tea and latte thing for you. Neither Junichi or Nagisa noticed that Carl had re-emerged. I'll sketch a rough of the key frame, Junichi said. Hi, Nagisa said. She didn't mind the coffee shop so much anymore. Peace out to my one viewer. Respect. Thank you for sticking around. I'm going to read 2 more chapters and then I think I'm going to watch Spider-Man 2. I really should be editing part 2, but I want to take I could take a break for a day. I finished writing it yesterday. I'll publish it eventually. This is where the book gets a bit weird. Let's carry on. Chapter 4. October 2018, Tokyo. 8. Makoto Taniguchi sighed. In the end, I couldn't protect you. She gripped the neurosensor and closed her eyes. No response. Out of power. Out of time. You did your best, Makoto, 8 said. She rested a hand on top of Makoto's. I can feel the Calypso's final pulse. Her hand lingered. The core was engulfed in blackness. Before the emergency LEDs flooded the Calypso's interior with neon purple. I had so much I wanted to say to you, 8 whispered into Makoto's ear, but I didn't know until it was too late. Makoto pulled away from the neurosensor and clasped 8's hand tightly. I don't want either of us to be afraid anymore. Silently, they embraced. They spent their final moments as one, engulfed by a fever dream. They melted away together, and then, sweet oblivion. Makoto, I. Data erased. End simulation. Groggy and dishevelled, Makoto awoke in the darkness of the capsule. She gazed at the OLED display situated in the wrist of her pilot suit. Atomo would be home soon, she thought. Back to reality. She clambered out from the capsule and outstretched her arms, stifling a yawn. She caught sight of her latex-clad form and blushed. Edith would definitely take the piss if she saw me cosplay like this, she thought. There was a time where the pilot suit would have invigorated her husband after a night of work. These days, he hardly ever noticed. Makoto slipped into a jumper and a baggy pair of jeans. She released her once-abandoned mobile phone from her back pocket. The shrill chorus of "Lime!" woke her from her trance. She opened Lime Messenger after some hesitation. I'm in the cab now. Have you eaten? Makoto. Not yet. Not since 6 p.m., I don't think. She certainly hadn't eaten for a while. But she certainly hadn't starved her imagination. Atomu. Would you mind ordering from Heck? Makoto looked at the lovingly framed centerfold poster of 8chan that clung to the otherwise bare grey wall. The character's electric pink bob cut and gaudy pilot suit clashed with her serene kneeling pose as she sipped from a ceremonial tea bowl. Makoto found it hard to imagine her waifu, 8, tucking into the deep-fried horrors of His Excellency's Chicken Kingdom, especially since 8 was supposed to be vegan. Makoto. Noblesse oblige. Lol. Manipulating the delivery app like a skilled pianist, Makoto glided through her usual order. The Heck app informed her that the food would be delivered by a fresh-faced college student named Kaide. Kaide's hobbies were listed by the app as listening to music and sleeping. Her favourite bands were, of course, Mrs. Children and Gladwimps. Makoto scanned the world outside of the simulation pod. Her apartment was littered with old issues of Leap comics and plastic convenience store bags filled with cheap, ready meals. No one is going to be outside, she thought. I should make an effort to tidy. Atomu is only home once a month these days. Why should he come home to a tip? Blasting Ohio Matayaro by Yura Yura Teikoku from a nearby wireless speaker, Makoto Taniguchi knelt down and flipped the switch of the kettle on the floor. She popped open a tin of kukicha and scooped a frugal amount of the green mass into a small glass teapot and waited. She watched vacantly as smoke arose from the kettle and filled the frosty one-room apartment. She brewed the tea quickly and poured it into an ornate china cup. She gripped the cup tightly with both hands, enjoying the prickling sensation of the heat insulated by her gloves. She savoured the tea and dozed off under the kotatsu, forgetting the world she inhabited for a brief moment. The shrill cry of the doorbell jolted Makoto awake. "It's Heck! Your meal has arrived!" squeaked an energetic young voice from the intercom. Makoto took a deep breath and slowly rose to her feet. The doorbell sounded once more. She sauntered towards the door. After another deep breath, she undid the lock and pulled the door open. "Thank you for ordering from Heck," the delivery girl said, grinning. Her wavy, shoulder-length olive green hair and glittery makeup contrasted with the orange Heck jumpsuit, but made her look like a video game character. Makoto fumbled for words as the delivery girl handed her the bag of chicken she ordered. Thanks, she said, bowing. Cold day, the delivery girl said, clasping her arms and pretending to shiver. Friggin' autumn. I should have worn gloves like yours. That'll be 2,504 yen, please, ma'am. Silently, Makoto paid, trying desperately to continue the conversation. She found herself magnetically drawn to the delivery girl's stunning hazel eyes. "Oh, wow!" the delivery girl exclaimed. "Are you listening to Yura Teikoku?" "Yes! Yes, I am. They're my favorite band," Makoto said, elated. "Me too. I'm Kaide, by the way. You must have seen my profile. I didn't get to write it myself, but fucking hell. Gladwimps and Mrs. Children are so generic. They suck. I'm Makoto. Pleased to meet you," Makoto said, smiling. "I like Western progressive rock as well as the Japanese stuff." "No way," Kaide said, resting a hand on Makoto's shoulders. "Me too. Have you heard Tubular Bells?" "Not yet, but I'll ask Google-sensei," Makoto whispered. "You should," Kaide said. "It will change your fucking life. Everything will just click together." Kaide's hand lingered on Makoto's shoulder, and their gaze met, locking into place. "I forgot your tip. It's a small thing, but I wanted to thank you," Makoto said. She dashed to a small fridge at the end of the corridor and reached for a bottle of Ipuku Ocha. Bowing gracefully, she presented the sacred object to the delivery girl. "You're such a good person," Kaide said, bowing deeply. "I fucking love this stuff. Thanks." "No, the thanks goes to you," Makoto said. "I'll listen to the tubular bells. Let me know what you think next time you order chicken at 6 in the morning," Kaide said. She winked, and with that, she was soon gone. Makoto laid the warm chicken feast atop the kotatsu before dozing off once more. She was jolted awake by the slam of the metal front door. With his unkempt hair and messy stubble, her husband Atomu resembled the kind of mad scientist you would find in an American comic. "Morning," Atomu mumbled as he awkwardly petted his wife on the head. "I didn't drool on the kotatsu again, did I?" Makoto said, staring at her towering husband. He shook his head and chuckled lightly. "Thanks for ordering the chicken," he said as he tore a chicken wing in half. "You hungry?" Nah. She didn't want to eat something as grotesque as fried chicken in front of 8chan. "I'll brew us up some tea, though." Atomu gorged himself. The mild-mannered scientist morphed into a beast as he ate, ripping flesh from bone and covering his hands and beard in chicken grease. "Gochiso-sama," he said, clasping his greasy palms together. "Thanks, Matcha. How was your day?" "The lemon wipes are on the table, dear," Makoto said, almost shouting. "Oh, it was okay. Uneventful, really. Happy to see you." "Or at least I will be," she thought, "once you wipe your fucking hands." Atomu wiped away the grease and freshened up. Makoto leaned over to her husband's side of the kotatsu, resting a hand on Atomu's inner thigh. "You want to rest with me tonight?" He sprang back from her touch and escaped the warmth of the kotatsu table. I'm a bit tired. Too tired tonight, Matcha. It's been a rough day at the office. I want to iron out the bugs before that Chadai Gaijin with the sunglasses pokes his big nose into my work. It's going to be hell." Fine. No problem," Makoto sighed. Tomo's always tired these days. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, Makoto. You know how difficult I find that kind of thing these days." "At least I've got 8chan to tide me over," Makoto said, pouting. "I'm very patient." "How was the simulation today?" Atomu asked, springing to life. "I enjoyed yesterday's recording very much." "It was... Look, don't get me wrong, I adore 8chan and all, but isn't it getting a little sad, me doing it every day? I feel like an addict." "Does the simulation lack something?" Atomu said. Exasperated, he looked like he was wincing in pain. The simulation was his life's work. "It's not that it lacks something," Makoto said. "It's just a little too perfect. It's becoming a little scary. I mean, today felt like the best sex I've ever had. But it got a little weird." "Did you record it?" Atomu asked excitedly. Makoto sighed. "There was one thing," she added, "but my memory is a little hazy. I can't quite remember what I wanted to tell you." "That happens with the simulation sometimes with our heavier users. Just give it a few hours and you'll remember everything nice and clearly." Returning to his mild-mannered self, Atomu went on about the recent changes and problems with the simulation. Makoto couldn't have cared less. She allowed his words to wash past her as she daydreamed about Kaide. "Man," she thought, "Kaide is so cool. I hope she's enjoying that tea." "Hey," Makoto cut in, interrupting Atomu mid-sentence. "Want to watch a movie? I ordered the new Mad Max and it looks awesome. I bet Kaide's watched it," she thought. "Oh, sorry, Matcha. I've got to go back to the office. Need everything to be perfect for that Gaijin prick." "Fine. That's fine. Please, could you get me some tea while you're out? We're nearly out of the good stuff, and I don't feel like going all the way to Hibarigaoka. Walk might do you good from time to time, Matcha. I'm worried you might become a shut-in," Atomu said, looking around the room. He leaned over to Makoto's side of the kotatsu and kissed her gingerly on the cheek. "I'll be back next weekend. I'll take you out somewhere, I promise." Makoto groaned. Her husband trudged through the bags of rubbish that littered the corridor and eventually reached the front door. "Itakimasu!" he bellowed. "Itterashai," Makoto mumbled. Slam. She emerged from her kotatsu cocoon and crawled towards the simulation pod. "At least you'll never disappoint me, 8chan." Makoto dumped her jumper and jeans to the floor and clambered into the pod. Her usual rule was at most once a day, but she had to alleviate her frustration somehow. She sat in the darkness. The simulation usually booted up as soon as she sat in the pilot seat. Not today. The red letters flashed into her memory. Data erased. End simulation. Sweet oblivion. You might have noticed that I really needed water and I had my kettle on the table, so I reached for it because this kettle is hecka awesome and I'm drinking some lukewarm hot water. Well, lukewarm water is not hot. Let's read the next chapter, shall we? So we're returning to Brett again. He's only the protagonist for 2 chapters in this one. I'm trying to make him less of a presence in the later novels. I tend to have a focus character in each story. So let's read the next part. Oh, I had a visitor then and they left. Oh well. I'm going to upload this on YouTube, so don't you worry about it, dear viewer. You will be watching this. You're probably not worrying because you're watching it already. Let me just take another. That noise was my kettle. It randomly bleeps sometimes. And I like it. Okay. Chapter 5, October 2018, Tokyo. Brett Wells took a deep breath as he scanned Hoya Station. I'm back, he thought. Inhale for 7 seconds and exhale for 5. He gripped his precious necklace. This is very similar to this necklace, actually. The necklace was made of 3 rings, each with a different magical word engraved into its surface. Love, sincerity, and truth. The shrill beeps of the crossing grounded Brett, alerting him of the world around him. I wasn't aware of the world around me then. Hoya High Street was bustling with laughing high schoolers, doting pensioners, and directionless cyclists. Brett wondered if the Western Friend Mega Market still played the same 12 or so backing tracks they had played 2 years ago. Dragging his suitcase behind him, Brett trekked through the narrow streets. He battled his way through slow-moving, one-way traffic and passive aggression. Brett entered the windy car park outside of Cafe Emerald. It took most of his willpower to avoid the delicious slur of the Calypso vending machine at the entrance, but he scurried towards the door to the cafe, abandoning his suitcase by a desolate wooden bench. He opened the door. The roguish bartender, Yoshino, looked up from the bar, following the bells that chimed whenever a customer entered the cafe. His prickly goatee was juxtaposed with a childish grin. "Brett-chan!" he squealed. "I thought I'd never see you again." Brett gave an exaggerated wave before tripping over the elusive sunken step. He'd forgotten about that. "I'm okay," he said, regaining his footing. "Long time no see, Yoshino-san." Cafe Emerald hadn't changed since Brett last visited 2 years ago. The lively paintings of manga characters that swarmed the walls were unfaded by the passage of time. The same worn wooden tables and bar stools basked in the sepia mood lighting. The bizarre, tacky plastic toys and urban vinyl figures that littered the bar welcomed Brett home. The cafe was mostly empty apart from the always reliable Yoshino and a gothic stranger perched on a bar stool. Brett couldn't help but stare at the raven-haired beauty cloaked in an elegant black dress and leather gloves, engrossed in the world of her paperback book. "Get you a beer, Brett-chan?" Yoshino said, reaching enthusiastically for a beer glass. "No thanks, Yoshino. I've been sober for a year now. Can I get a green tea?" "Wow," Yoshino said, pondering as he focused on Brett's stomach. "No more belly. You are no longer a fat boy. But you are not yet a tight boy." Still as abrupt as always, Brett chuckled. "I can make you a matcha," Yoshino said casually. "Such a waste. Why you no drink coffee, Brett-chan? Such a cherry boy." Brett coughed and motioned his eyes towards the lady to the far left of him. Like that. Yoshino clapped his hands together and bowed apologetically. Brett sighed as he sat down on the stool 1 seat away from the dark stranger. Yoshino scooped a hearty portion of green powder into a deep china bowl before adding a moderate helping of boiled water. He dusted off a lonely bamboo whisk and began to weave the whisk back and forth vigorously against the bottom of the bowl. As the mixture began to foam, the avid reader looked up from her book. Her eyes darted from Brett to Yoshino and the matcha and back to Brett again. I didn't see you there. Her smile was bright and inviting. I was in another world. Hi, Brett said, gripping his necklace with his right hand. That must be a really good book. I like books too. I like books too, she repeated, rolling her eyes at Brett as she stifled a laugh. That's good to know. Yeah, Brett laughed awkwardly. What are you reading? Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. I actually read it a few years ago. So it goes. I'm rereading it. That's a really beautiful book, Brett said. I read it whenever I'm down or confused about something, whenever I feel like I've become unstuck in time myself. How many times have you read it? The reader asked. She folded the corner of her page and closed the book. About 13 times, Brett said with a wry smile. I even got a copy for Yoshino to cheer him up one time. She's reading my copy, Yoshino shouted playfully. She stole it from me. Quiet, you, she said in a sharp, icy tone. It's not my fault you can't read. An ice queen and a thief, Yoshino said. Why can't you steal something useful, like Brett's virginity? Shut up, Yoshino, Brett muttered, his cheeks reddening. After a moment's silence, they all began to laugh. The stranger leapt onto the empty stool next to Brett and patted him on the back. There's nothing wrong with being a virgin, you know, she said. My bad, Brett-chan, Yoshino said. Your tea is on me. See, the kind stranger added. He loves you, really. Odd way of showing it, Brett chuckled. I'm Brett Wells, by the way. I am from the UK and I drink between 7 to 14 cups of green tea every day, he said, bowing deeply. I'm Eri Kurohane. I drink between 4 to 12 cups myself. She extended her right hand. After some hesitation, Brett shook her hand. I feel like I've met you somewhere before. She's a famous porn queen, Yoshino said. You've probably seen her on the internet somewhere. Now that you mention it, Brett, realizing that he had been holding Eri's hand for much longer than was probably socially acceptable, let go, looking down at his matcha. Ignore Yoshino, Eri said. I was a fetish model a few years back. It's not a big deal. Despite his blunt manner of speaking and ability to put people on the spot, Yoshino had a good understanding of social dynamics. Sensing that Brett didn't know what to say next, he decided to throw him a bone. Brett's a big anime otaku, you know. He might even be a bigger nerd than you are, Eri. I highly doubt it, Eri said, closing her stolen copy of Slaughterhouse 5. What's your favourite anime? Well, I learned most of what I know about the Japanese language from Apocalyptic Renaissance Calypso, Brett said. I've watched it so many times I think it has to be my favourite. Calypso, nah, Eri said dismissively. What did you think about the last episode? It was a little sad, Brett said, but I loved it. It made me want to become a writer. Eri's eyes widened and her cheeky smile resurfaced once more. I actually know the person who wrote that one. You know Nagisa Hirakawa? Brett exclaimed. If you see her, please tell me that I think she's a genius. That's sweet of you to say. Eri grinned. No, really, that show changed my life, Brett said. He picked up the tea bowl and drained his matcha in one sip. It's really sad that she only wrote that one episode. I'll tell her, Eri said, bowing. You sound very sincere about it. She rarely ever heard positive things about her writing, so I'm certain she would be overjoyed to hear that she has a fan. Brett told me he wanted to go back to England to be a writer, Yoshino said. You actually write anything yet, Brett-chan? A few things, Brett said wryly, but I haven't actually published anything. I'm still redrafting my novel. What kind of novel is it? Eri asked. Does it have a genre? It doesn't really have a genre, Brett said. It's a weird novel with loads of different tangentially related characters and plots. I'd love to read that, Eri said. It sounds like something I could lose myself in. I've got my notebook in my backpack, Brett said. I could show it to you later if that's okay. Eri nodded enthusiastically. Yoshino was preparing for the dinner time rush, chopping vegetables and onions at the speed of sound. What brings you back to Japan, Brett-chan? He asked, with a puzzled expression. I'm supposed to meet someone about an article, Brett said. He's a little late. Losing interest, Yoshino dropped a stock cube into a pot of boiling water. Eri, Brett said. He looked deeply into her hazel eyes. Can I ask you something? She nodded, looking deeply into Brett's dark brown eyes. Do you have a favourite part in Slaughterhouse 5? Oh, it would have to be the part with the locket. It has the serenity prayer written on it, the one about the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to tell the difference. The protagonist remembers that the woman he loved wore this necklace in one of his happiest moments. It makes me think back to that line earlier in the book, the three things that Billy Pilgrim couldn't change. Brett interrupted. The past, present, and future. That scene made me cry the first time I read it, Eri said. Brett nodded. Me too, every single time. The bells jingled as a thin, baby-faced blonde man in sunglasses burst through the door. Irashaimase! Yoshino yelled enthusiastically at the sight of a new customer. He emerged from behind the counter to greet the newcomer. You must be Yoshino. I'm Billy Lovedraft. He spoke in a purposeful, relaxed manner. His voice was deep yet quiet. Here to meet a guy named Brett Wells. Hello, Mr. Lovedraft, Yoshino said in broken English. He reached out a hand and rubbed Billy's abdomen. Wow, you're a tight boy. Nice abs. Thanks, I guess. Billy stood with a confused expression. You aren't so bad yourself. Yoshino whacked Billy on the back, nearly knocking his glasses off. Brett's over there. He's talking to a girl. This doesn't happen very often, so please try not to hit on her. You're welcome to hit on me instead. He winked. Billy half smiled, adjusting his glasses. I'll see what I can do. Brett-chan, sorry to interrupt, Yoshino said, but this is Billy-kun. He wants to speak to you. Oh, man. Billy took a moment to clear his throat. Kurohane-san is here too. Perfect. Do you know him? Brett asked Eri. Unfortunately. Eri groaned. I'm going to go back to reading. Suits me, Billy muttered. He switched from Japanese to English. Hey, Brett, your friend Edith has told me good things about you. Could you come sit with me at the table for a moment? He sauntered towards the tables at the back of the room and perched himself onto a wooden chair. Yoshino-san, I'll have an oolong tea. Yoshino nodded and yelled in the affirmative. Okay. Brett turned to Eri and bowed. I'd love to talk some more when I'm finished. Business is business, Eri said. I'm going to help myself to your manuscript while you talk to Billy, though. Mind if I root through your backpack? Help yourself, Brett said. Inside Brett Wells' backpack were two different books. One contained the novel he was working on, and the other contained the erotic fiction that very few of his friends knew about. He sat with Billy. His anxiety about the article took up too much of his mental capacity for him to worry about embarrassing himself in front of a beautiful lady. Wow, I can't believe I'm talking to Billy Lovedraft, Brett said. I've read all of your articles and even your novels. You're my hero. A lot of people tell me I'm their hero. I really don't know how to react to it. Forget about the facts I've written. Forget about the fact I've written articles, man. We're equals. Yoshino rushed past, placing a frigid glass of oolong tea in front of Billy. Iced oolong for the tight boy, he said, patting Billy on the shoulder before returning to his station. Friendly guy, Billy said. This place is starting to grow on me. Brett sighed and caught a glimpse of Eri concentrating on his manuscript. Don't worry, Billy whispered. You'll get a chance to talk to her when we're finished. Why you'd want to do that is beyond me, but he shrugged. Sorry, Brett said, fidgeting with his necklace. You told me you wanted me to help you write something about Calypso? I figured I had to explain it to you in person. It's a little weird. Billy took a long sip of his oolong tea. I forget that they serve oolong tea cold in cafes over here. Oh well. Do you know the game designer Atomu Taniguchi? The guy who makes the third-person shooter dating sims? Brett said, yeah, I know him. He was going to make a game based on Calypso a few years ago, but he never did. Well, not publicly. The truth is, he has a virtual reality simulation in the works. Billy stirred the ice cubes with his straw. Ice? It's freezing outside. But Otomo Taniguchi normally produces erotic games, Brett said, stroking his chin stubble. You telling me he's making some kind of virtual reality sex simulator based on Calypso? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Yes. Look, Brett, I'm incapable of lying. I literally can't tell lies. I've spoken to Taniguchi a few times, and he knows that I'm not going to like this project. He knows that I'm not going to be too receptive to what he has to say. Personally, I find it a bit sad that I can't be more open-minded about this. So you want me to interview him? Brett asked. Interview him? Billy downed the remnants of his glass. Even better, I want you to test his game. You like Calypso, and you've written some pretty decent articles about it. You love this stuff. Haven't you ever considered what it would be like to have sex with an anime character? Well, I'd be lying if I hadn't. Brett cut himself off mid-sentence. Harry let out a hearty laugh from her corner of the room. Oops, I forgot that she knows English, Billy said. Brett winced. It's a little awkward, I know, but it would definitely make for an interesting something to write about. Why can't you test it instead? Brett said. I think Otomo would trust you more. As I said, you genuinely care about the series. I don't want to write sensationalist trash. Plus, I'm a semi-well-known journalist who will suspect that I know too much. You know too much? Brett said. Is there more to this story? Don't freak out about this, Billy said, pulling an iPhone from his pocket and unlocking it. Here are a list of beta testers for his simulation. All of them are from the Nishitokyo area. The open beta opened a year ago. These people have been missing ever since then. Billy passed his phone to Brett. There must be hundreds of people on this list, Brett said, scrolling with a look of abject terror in his eyes. One name, in particular, caught his attention. Akemi Watanabe. He dropped the phone on the table and grasped his necklace. Obviously you're worried, Billy said. But I'll be with you every step of the way. You'll be safe. Billy, do the police know about these missing people? Oh, my throat's really hurting. It's a lot of words today. The odd thing is, I normally take longer to read the Spider-Man comics, which have less words, I guess because I'm scrolling through the images. Sadly, Billy looked down at the table. Oh, sorry. They do. But I'm still missing the piece that connects the story together. But I feel like I'm responsible. I've got to let the world know about this. Brett took a deep breath. I'm going to need to get some fresh air. Without acknowledging Yoshino or Eri, he dashed to the door. Breto-chan, doshita no? Yoshino gasped. The door slammed with the chime of the bells. Take as much time as you need, Billy said, bowing deeply. Old habit. I'm always bowing to people these days. You really pissed on the floor with this one, Billy, Eri ranted. You can be so insensitive sometimes. I'm going to go talk to him. She leapt from her seat, equipped her winter coat, and followed Brett outside. Yoshino made puppy dog eyes at Billy and produced a ridiculous, goofy grin. Like that. Am I good at setting people up, or what? He said. You didn't even do that much, Billy said disdainfully. I was the one who upset him. Still, how did you get Eri down here in the first place? She can't stand Nishitokyo. Gentleman never tells, Yoshino exclaimed. Brett, unfazed by the cold, was sat on the desolate wooden bench with his eyes closed. He was trying to meditate, to focus on nothingness. His heart was beating fast, and his chest stung. Eri snuck past Brett and made her way to the vending machine. She returned with 2 bottles of Ippuku Ocha green tea. Hi again, she called. Brett opened his eyes and looked at her with a blank, dazed expression. I got you this. Catch. Brett sprung forward and miraculously caught the bottle. He was almost out of breath. Giddy safe. She held her bottle out towards Brett. I like to call this green tea for beginners. It's not the best green tea in the world, but it doesn't taste too bad. Everyone's got to start somewhere. Brett nodded. You okay? Oh, yeah, I'm fine, Brett lied. Thanks for the tea. He uncapped the bottle and gulped a quarter of it down. I used to pretend I was fine after panic attacks too, Eri said, switching to English. It's okay to have emotions, you know. Heck, it's okay to have sexuality too. You don't have to be so repressed. Be honest. And you don't have to lie to me. You definitely want to bang 8chan, wouldn't you? Brett's cheeks reddened. He closed his eyes and laughed. You know, I prefer if 8chan banged me. I get the impression I prefer the lady to go on top. Eri clicked her fingers into a pistol pointed at Brett. Never be afraid to be yourself. I'm not going to ask how many times you visited my website or anything, but you'll be a lot happier in life if you can just be honest with yourself. I was just a bit freaked out earlier, Brett whimpered. Billy was talking about some pretty weird stuff. I overheard, Eri said. He's American, you're British. You guys are loud. You look pretty scared. Did you know someone on the list? Brett nodded lethargically. I used to teach English in Hibarigauka. One of my students was on the list. She's been missing for a year. Tears began to well up in his eyes. She wanted to live in America, but... Oh, God. You could help her, Eri said. You and Billy could end up helping a lot of people. Billy's an insensitive asshole, but he really does care about people. Yeah, but... Look, Brett, I used to think I had confidence issues, Eri said. She took a long sip of her tea. I'd be really hard on myself because I thought I was a coward, but I realised that I was actually a brave, strong, independent person. Brave people find a lot of things scary, but they do them anyway. She rested a kind hand on Brett's arm. He put the lid on his tea. I can't imagine you ever having confidence issues, Eri. You're one of the coolest people I've ever met. They both smiled. I'll do my best. I owe it to Kemi. If you need any help, here's my card. She offered a stylish black business card to Brett. I can contact Nagisa. See if I can find any inside information that will help you. Call me if you need any help or if you need someone to talk to. You don't have to help, Eri. You don't have to help, Eri, Brett said. I don't have to. I want to. By the way, Eri held up a nondescript maths exercise book. I'm going to read this at home. I'll give you some feedback when I'm finished. That's not my novel. Brett covered his face with the palm of his hands. It's just a side project. Relax, Eri said. I'm totally into this kind of thing. Nothing to be ashamed of. I might be able to give you some practical feedback. Here, you can drink the rest of mine. She patted Brett hard on the back. I'm going to go now. Don't forget to call me. Wait, Brett said. He wrapped his arms around Eri and hugged her. Thanks for calming me down. Eri wrapped her arms around Brett. That's okay. Thanks for the porn. They broke their embrace and burst out laughing. And that was the end of the first 5 chapters of my novel. I hope you've enjoyed them as much as I've enjoyed writing them. I noticed I had a few typos and spelling mistakes that I'm going to make sure aren't in the next edition. And by the time I've compiled all the stories together, I'm going to do a major edit. So don't worry. But let me know what you think in the comments on YouTube. Or send me a tweet at NoLimitsRustan anytime. I love discussing this because it's my novel. I wrote it and I love it. If you're one of my friends, give me a call. Tell me what you think anytime. Next episode preview. I don't have sound. I was in my head. The next episode preview had the Evangelion preview music. If you've heard it before, you know what it is. Eri here. Hi there, reader. Isolated and bored, Makoto tries her best to score a date with Kaide. Brett attends a Calypso simulation event in Akihabara with mixed emotions. Billy learns some startling truths about how Calypso was made. Edith and Darrow engage in a haphazard reconnaissance mission. Meanwhile, back in 1999, Nagisa and Janochi work on the final episode together. What will I be doing? You have to wait and see in the next episode of Apocalyptic Renaissance Calypso during Hours of Darkness. Plus, there might even be some fan service. So I talk about some pretty serious, deep stuff in this novel as well as stuff that I enjoy writing about. And I just want to let you know that, I kind of felt I needed to put this here. Many of the characters in this story are struggling with mental health issues. These issues are very close to my heart. I mean, I've suffered many myself. So it's I'm writing from the heart here, writing what I know. Depression, anxiety, and other forms of mental illness are serious problems. If you're struggling, please seek the help of your GP, a therapist, a family member, or a trusted friend. Remember, that it's always okay to ask for help, and that your mental health is important. I'm rooting for you. And that's the copyright information, all completely fictitious. And hey, this cover image, I've got to say, I made it using a photo I found on a royalty-free website that I paid for, and I edited the brightness. I'm really happy with this cover, and I'm also happy with the cover for the next chapter. I don't know where it is at the moment. I think it's in my downloads, so I'll get that another time. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed. I've had a really good time. And thank you to the viewers that stuck around. Look forward to watching this on YouTube, which I suspect most people will be doing. And let me know what you think. And if you did buy it from the Kindle store for 99p, which you can do if you want to support the author, I'll only get 33 of those pence. Please leave a review. Amazon's pretty weird with reviews and has taken a few down. But yeah, please leave a review. Let me know what you think and be honest about it. Thank you, and have a good evening, everyone. I'm going to go and watch Spider-Man 2.